So let's make some noise. I see Guo Feng Duan is present. Welcome. Good to have you. Maybe we can wait for some other people to join us in a minute. There is something wrong with the if I paste a link from the YouTube channel into a Facebook window, then it gives an error. So the thing you have to do is just move to YouTube, look for my channel, and then you can see which if the stream is live or not. So I did not find the second one. Hello. So some people have joined already. Now let me just get my music example ready. I'm giving some examples of possible questions for the assignment of the test of this course. Last week we did an example of analysis of a fugue. So what you can expect is in the assignment a fugue, and then you get the score from me, and then you have to annotate it and hand it in. So in the example of the fugue, it would be where are episodes, for instance, where do we find theme entries, where do we find episode theme entries, special contrapuntal techniques. So that kind of stuff you can expect. Now for today, I have an example from a sonata form. Hey, we know that one of the important form schemes from classical music was sonata form, and one of the assignments is you get the sonata form, for example, one by Beethoven, and then you try to recognize all the characteristics of the form. So just recapitulating a little bit, the essential thing of sonata music is working or playing around with themes and motives. That's one. And the other thing, playing around with keys and chords. So that's the kind of play within sonata form. And that kind of play is embedded in a, you could say, a three-part form: an exposition, a development section, and a recapitulation. So that's those things are to be recognized in the score and in the sound fragment. Of course, in sonata music, cadential formulas are very important because the tonal structure of the piece is so to speak, one of the important frameworks. Now there are all kinds of keys probable which will be visited in a sonata form, very often development from major to the dominant, and then via a detour back to the home key with a lot of modulation, chromaticism and stuff like that. If you start in minor, it could be development to minor dominant or the relative major of the minor key. So we are going to just listen now. I will try to scroll by the score so you can follow it a little bit, and I will just point out some things during listening. But the first thing we are going to do is just listen once while reading along with the score. Here we go. Now we have stopped. What you can see is the double bar line and the repeat sign, and this is always a visual cue to see that you have arrived at the end of the exposition. Now a lot of things have happened, but I'm going to walk you through a little bit in the global way, from the global to the detailed. So if we move back to the beginning of the piece, we have no key signature without sharps or flats. So that would be C major, A minor, and of course on the basis of the first chord we have here, we can see that it's same C major, tonic, dominant, tonic. And of course in the run of the exposition we end up at a repeat sign with a cadence in G major. Of course some detours are made, but this is the general thing in sonata form: development from tonic to dominant, and then in the development section by means of a detour back to the home key. Now that's about key. When we talk about themes and motives, I'm going to play now from the beginning, so we are doing the repeat, and then I'll stop at certain characteristics moments. So we get now the repeat of the exposition. 4 bars, 2 by 2. And now we have had 8 measures, and we have ended now in bar 8 with a cadence, dominant tonic in C major, and then the confirmation of the key is repeated so that we know where we start. You see the sforzati in the score, and they are meant to confirm in a very clear way that C major is the point of departure. And of course the F sharp, T-tom, raised 4th note of the major scale, intensifies the movement to the dominant, and then C major chord is the start of a kind of a transitional piece of music, because we are going to move away from C major to something different. Circling around C major. And you can see that here kind of alterations are being introduced. And it circles around the chord G major. F sharp is introduced. G major, of course, as a chord dominant within C. So we know what to expect, but there is something surprising happening in a moment. And then we end unisono of a G. And then we get an episode in which we seem to move to the minor key of G minor. But how definitive it is, we shall see. So, and now we have something circling around G minor, and now the same thing transposed, 5th higher, the same kind of melodic line in around D minor. And we get chromaticism. And we get cadences, dominant, tonic in G minor. And then we have the E flat and the D in the bass together with a C sharp, which is an augmented or German, I think it's a German, no, it's an Italian sixth. I have to start my fake piano. It's this kind of so the Italian sixth moving to the dominant of G, but we are not really certain if it's going to be G minor or major. We are just playing around with our expectations still. Now we have very clearly arrived in, you see the long fifth, long note fifth in the bass, and we have a clear dominant and a tonic in G major. So this is what we should expect tonally within the context of a sonata form, which makes this kind of changes we have had before part of the transitional section. If you remember, we had main tonality, theme 1, transition, theme 2, conclusion. That was the main thing from blueprint sonata form. And of course, composers deal with that in a creative way. It's not just mechanically reproducing that scheme. They try to play around with it a little bit, and that's what's happening. Now, what we also have is the mark dolce in the score. You see that there is a kind of an imitation between upper voice, middle voice, upper voice, middle voice, and we have a second theme without rests. If we go back to the beginning, we have a motive, rest, and conclusion. And in this way, this is a more, you could say, a more cantabile, sorry, I'm scrolling too far, a more cantabile line. And if we take the phrasing, you can see that it's ending here, at this moment. Again, 2, 4, 6, 8 bars, which is a kind of a complete melodic line. Let's listen. Back to the tonic. Variation. And now we end up in the part of the sonata where we move toward towards the end of the exposition. Here we go. And it's just an outcomposed chord sequence. Just unisono 4, 5, 1, subdominant, dominant, tonic. And then, of course, the rest is just repeating and reconfirming the new tonality G major. 5, 1, 5, 1. 5, 1. Now, the beginning of the development section, you can already see that it's really fragmented. So we get chunks of the material belonging to themes, thematic material of the exposition, and it's going to be fragmented, recombined, variated upon, and we will see that harmonically we are in for a rather exciting journey with a lot of arpeggio work here. So let's just follow that one. Hey, reminds us of the beginning. Wrong key. And you can hear that the material used is put in a sequential form, so this is going to make the tonality less clear. So we are shifting, we are kind of modulating. Long G in the bass. And the motif from the first theme. And here we have the home feeling. We are back home, C major, and we see the same material we saw at the beginning of the exposition. Let's just follow this. Now, what I can just give away is that the general characteristic of sonata form is that when we reach again the home key, we do not really leave it anymore. There can be a little detour, but the home key is to be the main thing in the recapitulation of sonata form. Different from the this is a little bit different from the beginning, but it's the same musical material. Same melodic line, same accompaniment. Cadences. C minor. G major. And here, of course, we have the second main thematic identity, now not in G major as in the exposition, but now in the home key C major. Again, very clear cadence, unisono, just single notes in octaves, 4, 5, 1. 5, 1. 5, 1. Now this is a special moment, but because we end on a 6/4 chord, and this move to the A flat major chord, which is within C major, a lowered sixth degree, a lowered submediant. It's a rather dramatic touch, so really something new in a way. The pattern of a chord breaking is present, but just in a little bit different way than we encountered it before. And what we get now, 1/6/4, and then we get a kind of a free episode, which seems to come from an idea from concerto. It's a kind of a cadence, 1/6/4, cadenza, ending on a dominant, and then again restating. And this is the coda. Deceptive. Now, maybe you are what you can expect as an assignment. This is not what I want. I have the wrong screen. Here we have the score. Maybe what you can expect as an assignment, you get the score, you get the recording. And what I'm going to ask you is recognize the main elements of sonata form, locate all cadential formulas in the score, and of course the tonal structure. Recognize the chords, for instance, of the chromatic passages in the development section. What kind of harmonic scheme is behind, for instance, let me take you back to the beginning of the development section. You can see here in the left hand of the piano chords B flat, B diminished, F minor 6/4, C sharp, C sharp dominant. What kind of chord scheme is behind that? And then we get here at this point a kind of a fake recapitulation. We have the beginning, exact beginning of the first theme, good theme, but it's the wrong key. D major cannot be the home key. D major is not the one you expect when you arrive home in this tonal structure. It should be C. Now, what you can also see is that we have a lot of sequential formulas here, a lot of contrapuntal things, in the sense that there is imitation between voices, which is also an important difference between development section and exposition and recapitulation. So musically there is a contrast between the two. Exposition and recapitulation are elements of the form to convince, to be clear, and the development section is the section of suspense, so to speak. There the surprises are more important. So that's also the way, the reason why we find a lot of tinkering with themes and motives, contrapuntal techniques, a lot of chromaticism, stating one tonality after another, using chromatic sequence formulas. So that's very regularly to be found within sonata form music. Now, maybe there are questions. Well, try to formulate a question or about this form. Maybe someone has a question, then I can try to answer it. And maybe you can use the chat window. Just short questions. No questions. Everybody is clear in what is expected. Well, sonata form is not the most difficult thing. I can understand that. If it's okay with you, I will just move on to a next example then. So you can expect a fugue, you can expect a sonata, you can expect, for instance, a concerto form. One possible form is this fragment. I give you a musical fragment. Vivaldi. Now, this is an example of Vivaldi concerto in G major. This is a typical example of ritornello form. So what would be questions, a possible question about this musical fragment is, make clear where the segmentation points are in this part, in this movement of this concerto. Now, what is a very important way of making segmentation is the change between a tutti, the total ensemble, and smaller groups of instruments, tutti ripieno. And that's a kind of a way one comes, then the other, the one again, the other again. That's a kind of so it's a typical sequential form. One of the questions could be, well, what kind of form is this? Is it balanced? Is it developmental form, or is it sequential form? And the answer would be mainly sequential form. Now, another question could be, what kind of tonalities do we encounter and how are they related? Now, that's, I think we can just listen again now, for I will stop the recording at certain places. What you can hear also is that sequential technique. Those kind of sequential fragments are also important to modulate, and the modulations are always to related keys. Well, let's start at the beginning. We start in G major, and so sorry for you with perfect pitch. This is, I believe, 415. Yes, So it sounds as F sharp major, but it's notated as G major. The A 415 is the reference point in most Baroque ensembles. Here we go. So we start in G major. And what is used? Tonic, dominant, tonic. And now we have already now we have already, when I'll come to your Clara, come to your question in a minute. I wrote already that it's going to be the second week of June that you get the assignment, so you get scores, you get recordings, and you get a question form with an assignment. So I will spend some time answering that in a minute. I'm just finishing this one, and then I will go into detail about the assignment and how to make it and how to hand it in. So a question is what kind of tonal centers do we encounter during the piece? Now here we move to the dominant, which is very ordinary from Baroque music and later, and then we continue. Sequence. And now we have the change between the tutti and the smaller ensemble. Again, G major. Chromaticism. And now we have the first ritornello, but now in the dominant key. Again, chromatic. And now we are in B minor, so which is the parallel of the dominant D major. Sequence again. B minor still. And now suddenly D major. G major. And since we are approaching the end, we get familiar material. Okay, well, now something about the things about the assignment, how I'm going to organize it. Well, you get an assignment, that's one. You get scores to annotate. You get recordings, and that will be a playlist, of course. So you're going to answer questions and you're going to annotate scores. So for instance, if you locate the cadential formulas, you put a circle around them or a rectangle, whatever you like. If I ask for specific chord sequences, you fill in chord symbols and functions. So that's one thing. How do you make it? It's allowed. You can make the assignments in duos. so together, and you can choose a companion of your choice. So that's you are free to do it on your own. That's okay with me, but for me it's no problem that you make the assignment in duos. So maybe I hope this is a little bit more clear. When is it provided? I'm going to provide it. I just have to open my calendar. Just a moment. Because we are now in the first week of June. Let me open my agenda. Here we are. I'm going to send you the assignment and the links to the playlist by mail. And let me open my agenda for when it is due. Take some time when live streaming, your whole computer slows down. So I'm going to provide, man, this is slow. I'm going to provide the assignment in the course of next week. So that would be, just a moment. We have now the 4th of June. I'm going to provide it the coming Monday. The coming Monday I'm going to provide the assignment. I will mail it to you all with the exact information. And I will also give the opportunity to ask questions. So we can have on Monday, if you want to ask questions, I can arrange a chat session or a Skype meeting. When is it due? I would say, well, that you get 2 weeks for it, and then let's say the week of Monday, 22 of June, to hand it in. So I hope that is clear, provided by mail. So I don't know if there are any questions left. You can now ask me in the chat window or send me a mail, and I can give the answers and send it to all of you. So maybe you have questions now. Please feel free. So I think things are rather clear. It is just general principles of analysis, recognizing characteristic forms like fugue, sonata, rondo form, that kind of stuff, and answering questions about the musical texture. So, any questions left? And maybe I can just do one extra example of a score by Claude Debussy. So what I'm certainly going to do is also take a piano prelude, and as an example I will take now Fille aux cheveux de lin. That is a prelude by Debussy, and you can see in the score, just a moment, I have to get another window. Yes, this is the one. Just changing it. This is a little bit better. Well, now an example, the recording. Let me see if there are still... There we are. Fille aux cheveux de lin. I'm just trying to get Spotify working. Aux cheveux with an X, of course. There we go. Maurizio Pollini, I think, is a nice one. Yes, here we go. Okay, well, that was Vie aux cheveux de lin. Let's stop that. Yes. Okay. Now, I've made all kind of rectangles in this score. So what I will do in score you get is single out certain elements in the score and ask a question about it. Now, one of the questions could be, what kind of cadential formulas do you hear? Now, there are two very characteristic ones with this chord. Which is subdominant dominant, which is a kind of a plagal cadence, and the other one a little bit later, 5-1 in E flat major. But what is really special is the way that the bass moves from the fifth to the tonic note, and the soprano also. It's an outward motion, so we have an authentic cadence and we have a plagal cadence, and here at this moment, at the end of the second grand staff, then we get another cadence. We get again 5-1 in the bass, fifth note, first note, but still the leading tone of the key is avoided. And in classical way you would have this, which is as beautiful and surprising as the choice Debussy makes. So that kind of questions can be asked. Now, another question is this bar, I hope you can see my mouse pointer, is rather special. This is a kind of a trademark by Debussy, because what kind of sound do we have? we get dissonant chords which move in a parallel fashion without resolving. And that's a kind of a trademark of Debussy. He uses dissonant harmonies, not too dissonant, of course, always mildly dissonant. But if it would resolve, you would get C flat. But it just moves. And then it is robbed of its functional meaning, and it becomes a chord melody or a chord line, parallel chord line. Now, something from the beginning, what is typical, if you take all the notes of the melodic line, you can already hear that it is a kind of a pentatonic pattern used in the melodic thematic line of this piece. Another way, a question to be asked, what kind of chords does he use in the rectangles at the end of page 1? The last ground staff, and you will see very quickly that it is all dealing with ninth chords. One ninth chord after another chord. For you jazz guys, it's nothing special, of course, but with the ears of late 19th century people, this was really revolutionary at the time to write this kind of colors. Now, a next one, let's say this one, céder au mouvement of the beginning. What would you expect on the first beat? So this accord. And you would expect classically, but you get the subdominant. So not moving from a dominant to the tonic, but to the subdominant. But at the same time, if you get a rectangle, the little rectangle, we get, so melodically we hear a dominant tonic move. So these kind of observations am I asking from you in the assignment you get. Now the last one, we end up clearly in G flat major as a last chord, but you see that again the 5-1, D flat, G flat, this one, the 5-1 is disguised present. Well, let's move back to the beginning and just play it once more. Plagal cadence. E flat major. Dominant chords, parallel. And an authentic cadence. And this one is also a nice one. If you take the Pio piano at this point, I hope you see my mouse pointer here, Pio piano. Of course, this is also special. relatively 6/4 chords, which is a very, in classical sense of the word, very uncommon, because 6/4 chords are a relatively unstable version of the triad, and it has to be in a kind of a context, 1/6/4/5 or 4/6/4 within a tonic chord, or within the dominant in an authentic cadence. So that's also a typical Debussy trick. Moving on. C flat major, the 9th chord, E flat, and again the pentatonic pattern, and pentatonic pattern within a major color of harmony. This kind of chord melody is also typical Debussy. To the subdominant. C flat, E flat, G flat. And what you see is also a bass walking in third leaps and not functional steps like 4th and 5th. Last chord, 5th note. 1st note, which is a kind of a, well, very faint echo of the functional cadence you would expect at the end of a composition. So that for now. Well, let's conclude now. We have been busy for an hour now. Please, if you have any questions, please send them to me in the mail, and I will respond to everyone. Yes, so if you have any questions, I will gather them together and answer them and give you in a mail exact information of how things are going to proceed. So you get the assignment coming week, you can make it in duos. You do it by answering questions, annotating scores and listening to music. You have 2 weeks to complete it and hand it in, and then this part of our lessons of this year is concluded. So, well, as far as we are now, I think I'm going to conclude now. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a little bit impersonal or unpersonal live streaming. I hope the sound was good and I was good, was good understandable, my talking and the sound. So let me greet you, and I will keep the stream a little bit open, so for let's say 5 to 10 minutes. So if you want to ask questions now in the chat window, feel free. But you are also invited to do it by mail, and we'll get in touch the coming week. Well, now, I would say goodbye. Take care, and we'll get this to a good end. Okay?